Well, that's a happy gospel. I love that last line. I'm not going to preach on it, but yeah, if I was going to rally the troops, the line that I would use would be, "You will be hated by all because of my name." It's there and it's real. It's what Jesus said. This is not the huggable Jesus. This is Jesus the prophet, very much so, as we see here today. And he's laying it on the line. And it reminds me of, because as we get near the end of ordinary time, the church begins to ask us to contemplate the end of all time. And it reminds me of the story that there was this priest and this rabbi who are standing by the bend in the road, and they got a sign that they're holding. It says, "The end is near," big letters, you can't miss it, going by. And this big pickup goes by, kind of a rough and tumble guy behind it, and he goes zipping around at high speed, and he sees that, and he yells out at the priest around. He says, "Oh, you religious nuts, why don't you just get off the road?" And he goes around the corner, and just about then you hear the screech of tires and a big splash. The rabbi looks at the priest and says, "Gee, Pat, you think we should have said the bridge is out?" So as I said, we get near the end of ordinary time, the readings shift, and the church asks us to contemplate the end of all time. So during the daily and Sunday readings, we get the eschatological readings that remind us and ask us to contemplate the end of all things. And such is the one we get from Luke, and the culmination of all things. Now there's a lot going on in this reading. I'm just going to look at the first part of it for today, but there's so much more that's there. But I'm going to look in this first section where Jesus tells the people admiring the temple that soon there will not be left upon another stone, one stone upon another. And that would have been pretty shocking to his listeners. Remember, we're just still in the temple is still under construction in the Second Temple period. It's been under construction for 46 years. As I said before, all churches, hospitals, and airports need to be seen. There's some rule they need to be under construction at all times. I don't know why, I don't make the rules, but that's the way it is. And so it was in the day of Jesus as well. And because the temple, though, for them was just much more than a building. It was the dwelling place of the Most High God. It represented the eternal covenant with Israel. Destruction of the temple would mean ultimate disaster for God's people. Yet, in 70 A.D., this prophecy of Jesus comes absolutely true when the General Titus put down the Jewish national revolt and ordered the complete destruction of the temple. And like all things Roman, they did a very methodical and a very thorough job. There is not one stone left upon another. There's some of the foundation left, and you can see that in the archaeological digs if you go to the Western Wall. It's the only part that's left, and that was one of the foundational walls. So, in our own day, popular culture is rife with apocalyptic and dystopic books and films and whatnot that depict the collapse of society by forces from without or within. I hated the Hunger Games. I hated it. It's the antithesis of everything that we stand for, especially in our youth programs. It's born, I know why she wrote it. She wanted to show the children, what happens to children of war and experience trauma. And then there's all what's the other one? The Discordant, I can't remember that whole series. Even Harry Potter, believe it or not, it just gets really dark, after the third book. So while, and then there's all, of course, all the other things, the zombie apocalypses and the this and that and the other thing in popular media. It's out there, and while it's comforting to learn by a well-funded study, there was a very well-funded study, and I was very comforted to learn that Alaska actually is the best place to be, and we have the highest likelihood of survival in a zombie apocalypse because of our isolation, our gun culture, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Such dark and pervasive images in popular culture tell me that secular humanism has failed our society. And it really has. There's just not a lot of hope out there. And to hear him say it, the end is near, and it's not pretty, and it's something to be feared. And however, how very different How very different from what we Christians believe and profess. For us, the end of the age and the second coming of Christ represents the fulfillment of all of our deepest hopes and desires. As the old translation, you say, we wait in joyful hope, as we await the blessed hope, as we say today, and the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ. It is something that is to be anticipated. So we look in joyful hope, not with fear and trembling. Jesus warns, of course, the end times will not be without trials. And that's, and he lays on a line, but it's, but so what? So what? For us, the end of the age is the destruction, of all things, but is not the destruction of all things, but the completion and the perfection of all things. What we await, as Peter says in his second letter, what we await is a new heaven and a new earth. As we see also that the heavenly Jerusalem coming down from heaven in the book of Revelation. What we await are a new heavens and a new earth, where all creation, including us, truly become what God has intended us to be. And a sobering thought, but not really without question, all churches. So we talked about the temple, but indeed all churches, from St. Peter's Basilica to our own little parish church here in St. Elizabeth, will cease to exist, not one stick on another. Now, some will mourn this structure, some will not. I don't care. But certainly, all the churches of the world, they will cease to exist. And we will be so happy about that. Because exulting in the true and substantial presence of Christ, there will be no need for his sacramental presence, because we are in the real, true, substantial presence of Christ. There will be no more need for that. The church and all its members will be glorified with him before the Father forever, and all, as Paul says, will be all in all. It's the completion of all things and the fulfillment of all our hopes and desires. So is the end near? Perhaps. Perhaps not. Nevertheless, it represents for us all that we are now and all that we hope to be in the resurrection of the dead and the life of the world to come.